Ladies and gentlemen, it is your host of Hope Media, Andre Norman. This is a special Moms Edition. I couldn't help but to do it, man. I'm saying in honor of all moms from everywhere who hold us down every day. We had to do this edition, and we have a phenomenal guest. All the guests have been phenomenal. You're just the next phenomenal person.
Thank you.
Would you like to introduce yourself to the 650,000 people locked up around the country who are watching you?
Yes, my name is Tasha Smith Mills. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an author, I'm a documentarian, and I love telling stories, especially with women all over the country who are experiencing the same thing that I'm experiencing. And that's mothers who have kids that are incarcerated and are feeling the same trauma that I'm feeling.
Gotcha. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Okay, we've heard a lot about New Orleans. It's like there's a Calico and there's all these different parts. What part of New Orleans are you from?
Actually, the West Bank. So you go over this bridge, right? In the West Bank, we call it the best bank.
The West Bank is the best bank.
Yeah, the West Bank is the best bank. Some people will, differ.
They ain't from the West Bank.
They're not from the West Bank.
From the West Bank.
So I've been living in New Orleans for 51 years.
You do not look 51. You need to kiss your mama.
Thank you.
And say, she did you good.
I wish I could. But she's
blow her a
deceased.
kiss then.
Yeah. I've, been living in New Orleans for forever.
You down with the bounce music?
I know how to do all that. Twerk. I know how to do all that.
I won't go ask you to twerk now. Listen, I want your son looking for me. Like, you got my mama on there twerking? Sir, she volunteered to twerk stuff. I'll talk about bounce. She went to a whole other level. You got New Orleans on me.
Yeah, but I only moved away one time, and that was after Hurricane Katrina.
Where did you go?
When we basically lost everything, New Jersey.
Ooh,
Yes.
That's a huge change.
It was.
You go to Brick City?
Culture
You went to
shock.
Jersey? Newark?
I lived in Newark.
Way different.
I lived in Newark, yeah.
Newark, like New Orleans, is a real tough town.
It is.
You kind of felt like that.
It
It was at home just without all the weather.
Well, no, New Orleans, I lived on the outskirts. I lived on the West Bank, so we didn't have all the rigmarole. But
Better
Newark,
food in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Better food.
Yeah.
So you went to high school in New Orleans. Where'd you go?
I went to high school, John Ehret High School. It was, a great high school. I went there for
What did you
4
do
years.
while you were there? Were you in the band? Were you in track? Were you a basketball star? Were you just a starlet? What was you doing?
I was a writer. I journalism classes. I wouldn't say that I was an AB student because I wasn't.
Okay, let's not talk about what we weren't. I was cool with writer.
But yeah,
So you had fun in high school. You graduated?
I graduated, yes.
And what?
Well, no, I didn't graduate from John Ehret High School. I dropped out after I had my first son.
What grade did you have your first son?
11th grade. And then
How you having babies in 11th grade?
I had him in the 11th grade. I thought I was all that in a bag of chips,
And then you got a little baby to go with the bag of chips.
Yeah, right.
He wanted the chips.
Dating a football player, thought he was all that. And this is where I am.
So
Yeah.
you couldn't. Your mother tried to tell you about it?
My mom tried to tell me.
She's like, slow down, girl.
Slow down.
You was like, Mom, I got this.
No, I couldn't tell my mom.
But
I
you
got
did.
this.
That's what you did.
I did, right.
If you said
I
it or
did what I
not.
wanted to do.
So you were like, all right, Mom, then you went outside.
Yeah.
Then boom, you got a baby.
Had a baby. Grew up in a middle-class family. 2 sisters. Mom was a paralegal. Dad was a banker. And I just went against the grain.
Way against the grain.
Way against the grain.
Yeah.
But
My sister did the same
yeah,
thing.
I came back though. I came back.
So first son name?
First son, Blake.
Blake. So you dropped out of school when you first had Blake. Did you eventually go back?
Absolutely, I went back. I got my GED and then I went to Tulane University.
My son wants to go to Tulane.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, I have one that went there as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what did you study at Tulane?
Media arts. And then I opened up my own talent agency. So I'm a talent agent for people in film and TV. Yeah.
You want to be my agent? That's what this is?
If that's what you want.
I'm always looking for good help. I'm saying someone needs to represent me. Nothing better than a mom.
I've represented some great people, including my son, who is an actor.
Okay. So now you have Blake. You finished college. How hard was it getting
I
through
didn't
college?
finish college. I had Blake, and eventually I got married. I got married at the age of 19.
To Blake's dad?
No, no,
What happened to
not
Blake's
Blake's
dad?
dad. He was in prison.
Wait a minute. So I thought he was playing football.
He played football and went to prison.
He mixed footballs up with the street.
Yeah.
And it's okay,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
So he's in Louisiana DOC?
Louisiana.
He goes to
yes.
Louisiana prison.
Yeah,
You
Louisiana
move on.
prison. Moved on.
You had to.
I had to, and married someone else, and had 3 other kids for a phenomenal man.
Got you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Blake's dad was phenomenal. He just got off track.
Yeah, just got off track
You
a
both
little
got
bit.
off track. He just took a while to get back on track.
Yeah. He's his father's child.
Oh, listen, I get that. So
get
you're
that?
married, you got your 4 boys,
Yes,
and life is good.
life is good.
So at what point does your kid start going off the rails?
Right after Hurricane Katrina, we were going through a serious crisis. My mom was really sick. Hurricane Katrina hit, my mom goes into the hospital, and everyone separates. So we're in Newark, New Jersey. My mother's in Tennessee in the hospital. Well, Alabama, I'm sorry. Tuscaloosa, Alabama. My sisters are in Chicago. Dad is in Chicago, and everyone's just scattered. And then my son just kind of got to Newark, and things just kind of went haywire.
So what was Katrina like to be from New Orleans and your whole city just washes away?
We were going through a crisis. It was trauma. It was trauma for everyone involved. You know, you wake up one morning, and I remember that morning, my girlfriend, we would go to the Navy base and buy groceries. And that particular morning, the grocery store was empty. And I get home, and I'm about to cook dinner, and one of my actors from Michigan, Mickey Val, she said, "What are you doing? Are you leaving?" She said, "I'm on my way back to Michigan." And I'm like, "Leaving for what?" She said, "A hurricane's coming." I'm like, "This is every year. Nothing's going to happen. Like, we're going to be great."
We've done this many times. 50
done
years
this,
we've done this.
We've done this forever. And she said, "I'm telling you, it's going to be different." And so I remember my husband at the time, he said, "I think we need to leave." And so we waited until the next morning, got in the car. And usually it's a 6-hour drive to Houston. And it took us about 24. It was bumper to bumper traffic because no one ever leaves. It's always a fluke, a storm's coming and then that storm never comes, or we get a little rain and then everything goes away. But this time it was a big kahuna.
Did you make it to Houston before the storm?
I made it to Houston, and they actually said that everything had bypassed. So we were about to go home, and then the levees broke. And
So you survived the storm.
We survived the storm.
You didn't survive the levees.
We didn't survive the levees.
Then
And the
whole
wind
city-
damage. And then the whole city was underwater. And it's like, what the hell are we going to do now? And so one of my actors, Maria Secor, said, "Come to New Jersey." And we just got in our car and we drove to New Jersey, took everything that we had, all of our savings, and we went to New Jersey.
So your son gets to Jersey, different lay of the land, different friends, families disjointed. He drifts a little bit.
Drifts a little bit.
So how old is he at the time?
He was 14 at the time.
So now he's introduced to life in Jersey.
He's introduced to life in Jersey, but it was going okay. He started doing off-Broadway plays. He started, because he's an artist. He was an actor. He was a dancer. He was a writer. He was a rapper.
He was your child.
He was my child, So he started acting and acting in plays. And like I said, we would drive to New York every day so he could rehearse. And then it was like everything just started just shaking, like girls and,
You didn't think girls were coming?
girls, well, yeah. Girls started coming and then hell broke loose. Then I get a call, "Mom, I really want to go back home.
It's time to go back home.
It's time to go back home."
So you moved back to Louisiana for him.
I moved back to Louisiana because my mom was dying,
Okay.
and my mom eventually died.
So y'all back in Louisiana.
We back in Louisiana.
Back on the West Bank?
Back on the West Bank.
The best bank.
The best bank.
And so he's back home.
Yes.
Now he's outside though. He's 17.
He's 15 and
Okay.
he's outside.
He's outside Louisiana is tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then he goes to juvie or he gets arrested a few times?
He gets arrested a few times.
Did you get the mom story or did you get the real story when he got locked up?
I got the real story. But started running away from home. He was going to an all-boys school, one of the best all-boys schools in New Orleans. Just wouldn't go to school. And I was really going through an existential crisis. And so was he. And so he said, I'm going to live with my dad. And so I couldn't accept that.
Huh?
I couldn't accept that because I know where that would lead to.
Gotcha.
I was protecting him from what I knew would happen. I thought I was protecting him.
Right. So you kept him home.
I kept him home. And so he started running away, getting into trouble. His dad was protecting him out there while he was getting in trouble. And then his dad left and went to Texas.
Now he's out there with no cover.
No cover.
Then how old is he when you get that call that he's crossed that line?
The last time when he got out of juvie, he never stayed for longer than maybe a week or two. And the last time he said, Mom, he said, I'm going to Texas. I said, no, you're not. He said, just leave me in God's hands. And I said, that's what I'm going to do. And that was the last time I saw him free at 17 years old.
He went to Texas.
He went to Texas.
And you just like, no.
No.
You knew better.
I knew better.
But you couldn't stop him.
I couldn't stop him.
So when he gets to Texas and then he gets in some kind of trouble, then somebody calls you, what do they say?
Yes, I remember sitting home. I'm home helping my younger son with his homework. And there's this Texas number that came across. And it was his dad saying, Blake has a $250,000 bond and we need to do something. I said, I'm not going to do anything because he's with you.
Right.
Blake made this bed hard, but I didn't realize how, I just didn't realize how bad it was. So I'm trying to be this mom and be hard,
You're
not
thinking
realizing.
It's a juvenile thing. See, juvenile is not, but it is a kind of mental setup because they take you in, no matter what you did, and they let you go 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
You might have robbed somebody, stole a car, shot at somebody, whatever you
Yeah.
did. You go to juvie, mom can come sign you out in 2 weeks. So moms get this thing, well, they're going to let them out in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
But once you hit that adult line,
right.
there's no more snack time. There's no more mama signing
Absolutely.
papers. And you're
Absolutely.
thinking, oh, it's going to be like, they're going to let them out.
Yeah, they're gonna. I mean, it's no big deal, right? And I worked in the legal industry. I'm a paralegal, and so Blake calls, and he says, "Mom, you have to do something." I said, "This is out of my jurisdiction. Had this been done in New Orleans, I would be able to do something, but I can't." And I remember I just hung up and went to
numb.
sleep. I wasn't numb because, again, 17, I'm thinking you're going to come home.
Right.
And then I get a call from a public defender, and he said, can you come to Houston so we could talk? And so I said, yeah, I can come to Houston. And he laid the law down to me.
He told you the story.
He told me the story.
Did you fall out the chair?
I did not fall out the chair then, because what he said to me was, Blake was looking at 15 years. And he said, but, you know, he's 17, he'll be able to get off on probation. And I said,
He
okay.
never tried this case in Texas before. Listen, there's some states that go hard.
Yeah,
And they don't give you a pass on your age. There's some, the law is the law. And there's some places like, yo, he's a kid. And there's some places that no, this is an adult crime. There's a
absolutely.
difference. So back in the days, Massachusetts was, he's a kid. Then the case happened and they said it became, oh, these are adult crimes. There's some places, oh, he's a kid. Then in some places, this is an adult crime.
Yeah,
Texas this is an adult crime state.
Yeah, we learned that real quick.
So he goes to trial or he pleads guilty?
Well, it was a judge trial, so he goes in front of the judge, and I remember walking in, and I'm hopeful. Me and my 86-year-old grandmother, we prayed that morning, and we walk in the courtroom, and we're really hopeful, and Blake walks in shackled, and the judge puts me on the stand, and he's like, the prosecutor ate my butt up.
You weren't ready?
I wasn't ready. He basically said, you sent him to an all-boys school. He was an actor. He did this. He did that.
He had an opportunity.
Yeah. And he just went in. And I'm like, why?
He turned it around.
He turned it all around. Like he had all this, and this is where we are. And then he put Blake on the stand. And then Blake gets on the stand, and he tears him up. Yeah. And then his father walks through the door, and the whole courtroom got quiet. And and the judge says, "That's your dad." And he said, "Yeah." And that's when the judge said, "I hereby sentence you to 40 years."
40?
40 years in the Texas State Penitentiary with hard labor.
How do you go from 15 to 40? And I was going to ask you how you felt watching them in shackles coming to the courtroom. What is hearing the judge say 40 years?
I collapsed.
What were you thinking?
40 years. 40 years. And I remember getting in my car with my 86-year-old grandmother. And it normally takes 6 to 8 hours to get from Houston to New Orleans. It took us 12 hours. I had to stop. I was throwing up. I had to apologize to every parent that I criticized. When I would see kids on the news, the first thing I would say was, "Where's your parents?" Why was I now put in this population of women who I once criticized? I was now it was almost like an equal opportunity employer, right? I'm on an assembly line at this point. What am I going to tell my friends? What am I going to tell everybody? Where's Blake? Not my star. And so I went home and I took every pill in my medicine cabinet. And my ex-husband found my lifeless body, and he rushed me to the hospital.
It was that bad?
It was that bad.
When you woke up in the hospital?
My doctor said if you don't get it together, you'll be dead in a matter of 2 weeks.
What about your other kids?
At that point, I wasn't thinking.
Just overwhelmed?
I was overwhelmed. My mother had died. My marriage was in shambles. And I just lost my eldest son, who I've overcompensated for because his dad wasn't there.
I can't even picture that. That's too much for a multitude of people, let alone one. So how do you pick yourself up from that?
And so years of therapy, journaling. I'm a writer. So every night I would journal. I would go to work. And in my rearview mirror, I would see my son in dancing school. I would see him playing football. I would see him rapping. He had shot a Lil Wayne video. I would see him. I would just be imagining all these things while I'm crying in my car on my way to work. And then when I would get off work, I would go to my therapy session. And I started going to therapy with this guy who had been in prison. And he told me, he said, my mom died right after I got out of prison, and I promised her I would get my PhD. And he gave me hope. He said, your son's gonna be fine. And so I kept going to therapy. I kept writing, and I pulled myself together.
At some point, Blake calls home. How's that call with him?
While in prison?
While he's in prison.
While in prison. To be honest with you, Mr. Norman, he didn't have to call home because every weekend I would drive from New Orleans to Houston to see my son for 15 minutes.
You would drive 6 hours.
To see my son for 15 minutes. I would literally, my schedule was getting off of work at 5, go home, rest, cook dinner, rest, be up at 3 to get there for a 9 o'clock visit.
Why was it only 15 minutes?
Because he was in county. He was still in county.
You only get 15-minute visits.
Only 15 minutes.
Then when they moved him out of the county,
They moved him 18 hours away.
that's out the way.
Yes.
Texas is a big
Yes.
state.
And then I'm flying basically
Oh, you're
across the
flying.
country. And I remember that first visit. I'm driving and I'm talking to myself because I flew into this little small airport. And then it's 2 hours. I'm driving, I pick up a rental car and I'm by myself and I'm driving 2 hours and I get there and I've never been to a prison before. So this is all new territory for me, right? The dogs, they're telling me put my hood up, put my trunk up.
Yeah.
The dogs are coming around the car and I'm like, what's really going on? And then I get there and I'm like, there's all these people, more women than men, to see their sons. And one lady was like, I leave this prison and I go to another prison and she's like 76 years old. And I'm like, this is new territory for me. And then I walk in and I'm just amazed by, you can't touch a soda machine, right? My son can't touch a soda machine. So they give us these little plates, cafeteria plates. We go up to the machine and we buy what they want.
Yeah.
They take it out the bag. They take the Snicker out the wrapper. They put it on a plate. They pop open the can, the Coke,
Yeah.
or whatever I buy,
And take the
Mountain
lid.
Dew, right? Take the lid off. And I'm like, what the hell is this?
It's prison. So you left out and you're in your car. You have to
And I'm crying.
cry.
I'm crying all the way to the hotel. And then I have to do this again on Sunday. I go and see my son, white jumpsuit. They bring him to the room. And he's shackled. And then they take these shackles off. But I forgot to mention, the first visit, he was in solitary. 18 hours, right? Even though I flew, they told me I couldn't see him. And I'm like, I've just spent, this is $1,000 trip, and you're telling me I can't see my son.
They're like, yeah.
Yeah. But
No
they
visits
did.
on solitary.
They did. It was just behind the glass.
Oh, I've
Yeah.
had moms, including mine, they'll call, is my son at the prison? They'll say yes. She travels to the prison, she fills out the form, oh, he can't have visits, he's in solitary. My mother doesn't know what solitary is. He's in there though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's in there, but you can't see him because of where he is. She said, what do you mean? He's in there. Mom didn't understand the differentials in the prison. I got into a fight, I got put in solitary, so therefore I'm on restriction, and then I can't have visits, TV or phone. Mom just knows I'm in there. And she just drove up here on a Sunday to come see me, and she can't get in. She said, but I called. So what happens is moms don't know when you call, don't ask if your child is there, ask if they're able to have visits.
Yes.
It's a different question.
Right.
Because they will answer the question you ask. Is he or she there? Answer is yes. Are they eligible for visits is a completely different answer and question. So when you drove, you traveled,
I traveled.
and they told you you can't see your son.
Yes. But eventually they did.
But when they first told you that, you
I
were
was like, what? Well, what is solitary? Because I didn't know what, this was all new to me, right? You know, when Blake's dad went to prison, I would never let Blake go see his dad. Because I just refused to. He was a baby. And it was an ongoing back and forth, going back and forth to prison. So I just never allowed him that experience.
Now
But
he's
I
in
never
there.
thought I would be a part of this experience with him.
So what did you think of you now with a child in jail for 40 years?
I blamed myself for a long time. For a long time, I deflected a lot. I was wondering, what could I have done better? And so again, I journaled, and I journaled. And so one day, I was walking the red carpet of the movie Straight Outta Compton. And my client, Jason Mitchell, who played Eazy-E, he looked at me and said, "Thank you for bringing me from the hood to Hollywood. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you." And I said, "It shouldn't be you, it should be my son." And I got on that plane. And now I'm married again. And I told my husband and my son, who accompanied me on this trip, I said, "I'm going to write a book." Because there's no literature of there's no literature of moms talking about an incarcerated child. And I know what that feels like out of embarrassment and shame. So I told Blake, I said, "Blake, I'm going to write a book. How do you feel?" And he said, "Let me help you." And he said, "What are you going to call it?" I said, "Whenever I leave that prison, what do you say?" And he said, "I always say, Mama, I should have listened."
That's the
And
name of your book?
That's the name of the book. And I wrote the book. And Blake wrote me a letter in the book. And it's "Dear Mama." And he said, "Mama, your loyalty was as long as St. Charles Avenue, but there were some things that you missed. I would tell you some things, and you didn't adhere to them." And he was talking about his stepfather. When you're in a blended family environment, sometimes that's a big issue. When you think you're not loved, right? In your own head, you're writing that story. And it doesn't matter how I try to help you rewrite your story. There are some things that you're still feeling. And you were running to something that wasn't there, but you were not comprehending what was really there, right? And so I closed the book. I said, I'm not completing this book, right?
I don't like this letter.
Because I don't like this letter. And then my husband says, "That's one of the most important things, because maybe other kids feel that way." And so I came with a new chapter called Parental Conviction. And I basically said how I felt and how mothers and families need to not just hear their kids, they need to listen to them. And I think that's when I started to listen more.
You got this new ear. You know Blake's going to be watching this. He's watching this, right? He's like, "That's my
He
mother on the
loves you. He loves you.
He's like, "That's my mom on the tablet." He's running around the unit. "I told you that's my mom on the tablet." So what do you want to say to him?
I love him. And
Tell him.
I love you, Blake, and I'm so proud of you. We have so much to do together, especially when you come home.
Does he call?
He calls. He calls a lot. He's really close with his brother who lives in New York. But if we don't go, there's no visits.
What are the phone calls to you like?
Bible study.
You do Bible study with him?
He's a pastor in a prison.
He went to jail and became a pastor.
He went through a lot. He went through the gangs, and he went through a crisis and trauma. And you know what that's like. I've been extorted, and then, he's been in there 14 years, since 2009. 14, 15, something like that. He's been in there. He's 33. He was 17 when he went in. And so he had to change his life around. And so now when I walk in that prison, I hear the correctional officer saying, "He's a minister." And then there was this older white guy. He said, "I'm a pastor. I've been pastoring here for a long time, but that's my pastor."
How did that make you feel?
That makes me feel proud, because I know he's doing what he has to do to get through.
God's doing a great work in him.
God's doing great work. And
I didn't like what God sent me to school. It was no part of Terre Haute, Indiana. There was no part of Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. There was no part of MCI Walpole that I liked. But that was a school I needed to go through.
Yeah.
I wished we could find another place to send our kids to school to get this transference. But some of us happen to go through this space. And son to mom, I tell you, we come back.
Yes. Actions create acquisitions.
Yes.
And I tell my kids all the time, dream the painting and wake up and paint the dream. And when you do that, you'll come out a much better man.
So in Texas, they have tablets.
They have tablets.
So you get video visits?
I do.
So what's a video visit like?
We're laughing that the last video visit was last month, and my grandmother has Alzheimer's. And so I went over so she could see him because they were very close, his great-grandmother. And she said, "Oh, Blake, you look great. You always were, you were always particular. Look at the lining of your hair. Look at your teeth. You have all your teeth." And she was telling, he was just laughing, "Grandmother, are you still cooking those red beans?" And so that was the last visit. But when we, have video visits or when we go and visit, I was supposed to be there this weekend. But he said, "I love Mr. Norman." He said, "He gives us hope in here." He said, "You go do what you have to do."
You gave up a visit with Blake to come see me?
Yes, yes.
I feel special.
Yes.
That's
because he told me.
Thank you, Blake. I appreciate that.
He told me.
He said, this is a good thing to do.
Yeah. So
what is your message to the other kids who don't have moms?
My message to the other kids who don't have moms, because I was volunteering in Orleans Parish Prison, and I can say this. I was teaching creative writing there, and I was teaching it through my book. And they would say, "Miss Tasha, if we had this book, we wouldn't be in here." What I tell kids is, you have a whole life ahead of you. Live it. How do you think you're in jail for being territorial, but you don't own anything? Ownership is everything. Get your education. If you don't want to go to college, fine. But do something that you're good at and do the best at it. We all have dreams. All kids have dreams, right? Sometimes they just don't know how to go about going after those dreams. But when you continue to dream them, you paint them in your mind. And then you create the biggest canvas until that canvas is finished. And so I tell kids, especially the ones that I mentor, you have to keep on dreaming. Keep on dreaming. The world is an oyster, and it's out there waiting for you.
So what are you doing differently with his younger brothers that you didn't do with him?
Listen. I listen. I listen. Even I have 3 other children. I mean, they're all grown. But I listen to them. I never listened to Blake. I didn't hear him. And so even in my documentary that I'm creating, the first thing I ask the moms, or I ask them, "How did we get here?" And some of them will be like, "What do you mean? What part did you play in this?" So Blake, I am sorry, because the part I played in it is that I was a 17-year-old hot girl, right? I was a 17-year-old petite hot girl.
Right.
I'm fat now, but I was a 17-year-old hot girl.
Hanging out in New Orleans. Who
With parents tried to tell her, who dated a football player who was a drug dealer who I was intrigued by. And this is what happens. I got pregnant, had a baby, and this is the product of that. But see, what people don't realize is when God placed this in my life, my son going to prison, he knew what he was doing. He was saving Blake, but he also knew we had talent. Everybody in my family had talent. All my kids have talent.
You just,
and so
talent.
This right here, me sitting here with you, is a byproduct of that talent.
There's a mom in Kansas City. Her last name's Rush. She had 3 boys. All of them were NBA stars. I'm like, that's good genetics.
Yeah.
You put
yeah.
out 3 NBA stars.
Yeah.
Not one, not two. She put out 3. I was like, she's like, we talented.
Yeah.
And they were like top players and phenomenal. So you just put out artists.
I put out artists that my Blake 33, he was an actor, a writer. Now he's a pastor. So he's speaking in people's lives daily. I have a 30-year-old who's a graphic designer, has a shoe line. I have a 28-year-old who's a fashion photographer and a filmmaker living in New York City. And I have a 26-year-old who's number 6 in the country playing Madden.
Okay.
Yeah. So we ask ourselves,
No more kids? You got no more coming?
no,
Why not? I mean, you need to keep going.
I
You need
can't.
to have like 6 more kids.
I can't make any more kids. I'm old.
Call God. I
Oh,
mean,
no.
He's done it. He's done it in the past.
No.
Sarah had a couple past days. I mean, at what you're producing, I don't know why you stopped. I'm just kidding.
I know.
My mom had 6. And we were all talkers. This is not just a me thing.
Why does that surprise me?
I am my mother reborn. That's how I describe myself. I am my mother reborn. My mother is passed, but if you met me, you met her. I could literally sit my mother in this chair. I could leave the house, leave the space, and she could do this interview starting from scratch, and I guarantee you she would ask you the same questions I did. Because I think like she does. So everything I would ask is the same thing she would ask. Because I used to just be on her hip everywhere we went. I was stuck to mom's hip. Stuck to her hip. And I just watched, listened, and learned. And I became a replica,
Yeah, male version of your mother.
male version of mom. When I was born, my grandmother told her, of the 6 of us, she said, that's the one. She said, that's your payback. That's what she called me. That's your payback.
And she's proud.
Oh, 1,000%.
She's proud.
When I was upstate acting a fool, going through the gang life and the extortion life and the drama life and solitary, she used to go to work and be embarrassed to talk about me. Because when moms go to work, they talk about their kids.
Yeah, yeah,
And she could never talk about me.
yeah.
She'd go to church, the moms talk about their kids. She could never talk about me. Where's Andre, the little brown skin boy? Couldn't say nothing. Oh, he's in the gang. Or he just got shipped out, or he's in solitary, or he's fighting on the yard, or he's selling drugs. And she couldn't say that, so she just
Really?
had to put her head down. Because she knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
So when the conversation came up, she just put her head down and have to excuse herself from the conversation. When I finally came home, I started working and doing what I'm doing. And you say, where's Andre? Oh, he's giving a lecture in California today. Where's Andre? Oh, he's on a plane going to Africa to work with the government over there around these situations. Where's Andre? Oh, he's at his office at Harvard. Would you like to go visit him? Where's Andre? I'm not sure, but I can guarantee you he's someplace doing something positive.
Wow.
And that's how she spent the last 24 years of her life,
Wow.
knowing that I'm someplace doing something great. And on my tombstone, one of the things that will go on is honorable son. Because I said, never again will this lady be embarrassed to say my name. I am the most like her of our 6. I'm our unofficial favorite. You know what I'm saying? Because you got needy kids.
Yeah.
I was a non-needy kid, but I was like, I ain't gonna worry about him. I didn't confuse time spent with love.
Yeah.
My brother needed more time than I did. My sisters needed more time than I did. So I didn't take that the wrong way. I took that as I'm helping her by being self-reliant.
Yes.
Yes, but we do it. We come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
She came to see me in solitary one day. She said, how'd you get in jail, in jail? I said, Mom, I'm working hard. This ain't easy. She said, what about your trumpet? What about, I'm like, Mom, you don't get it. I'm a gang leader. I'm balling. I'm the man. My dad was here, and I got more status than he had. And she walked out of the room crying, and I didn't get it. But when I finally got it, I'm going to give you might have said this to your boy. Blake, you might have heard this. She said, boy, if you can take 10% of your energy and turn it into something good, you might turn the world upside down. And when I finally did it, she was right.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, those no's are helping them. I remember this guy called me. He was trying to extort me probably for the 15th time. And I said, the money that you're asking me for, it'll be cheaper to put him in a body bag and send him home. Now, don't you ever call me again. And I will be calling the FBI. And I never got that call again.
Yeah. I mean, prison life is different.
Prison life is very different.
Yeah. Prison life is different.
But it's, now, when I look at it, I had no respect for prisoners at all. And I don't ever call them prisoners or inmates. What I call them is men that are challenged.
That's the mom version.
When you tell me, oh, inmate, I'm like, no, they're challenged men. And I remember going to Folsom State. They invited me there because my books are in a lot of prisons around the country. And they got to invite 2 speakers, and I was one of them. And I spoke to 40 lifers. And one guy told me he never believed in God until he read my book. He said, your generational versus environmental chapter helped me because I never knew what generational curse, what that was. He said, but my dad went to prison when I was 1. I never knew him. I went to prison when my daughter was 1, and my daughter just paroled out of prison. And so sometimes we don't know how we got here. But if only we could do just the right thing 10% of the time, we'll figure it out.
Did you write those books after Blake went to jail?
Yeah. It's called Mama, I Should Have Listened.
Mama, I Should Have Listened.
So I wrote it after. After I went through all the therapy, all the pain, after being extorted, and I realized no more.
No more. You're gonna be a victim, not a victim.
Absolutely. And so now, my book was on a billboard in New Orleans, and it's Mama, I Should Have Listened. And people that didn't know that my son was in prison, I was broadcasting it. Because I wasn't just helping my kid. I wanted to help other kids. I wanted to help other moms who was going through the shame and embarrassment. And they didn't know what that looked like for them. But their head was just down all the time.
That's my mom.
Well, let's talk about it and have those comfortable conversations. Not uncomfortable. Let's have those comfortable conversations. And then I took it a step further and I created a documentary called Unheard Voices, A Mother's Quest for Freedom. I took everything that I had and traveled the country and filmed 25 mothers on the quest for freedom who are all going through what I went through. But they're embarrassed and they're ashamed and they don't know what to do. And when we hear those stories, we start to understand what that looks like. You know what I mean? Just like what it looked like for your mother, how you explained that to me. When I watched your videos, I got a whole new conception of what your mother went through.
I'm sitting here because I used to be an extortionist. So I'm sitting here feeling bad about myself.
You should, Mr. Norman, you should.
Prison life, let's hold on. You could be one of 2 things. You could be on one side of that thing, right? And my mother would tell you, if they called home on the news, if the news came on and said there was a riot at the prison and a bunch of people got hurt and there's a bunch of people in the hospital, there's a bunch of people going to court, my mother driving to the courthouse. She's like, my son ain't at the hospital.
I had a mother that got extorted $17,500 in 1 month.
I wasn't doing it like that. I was in jail in the 80s. See, no, I was in jail in the 80s. It wasn't that deep.
Yeah.
But the thing is, prison's just not a cool place.
No.
It never will be. When I go to prison, I walk with them men, I work with them, I say, listen, I'm not going to make the showers better. I'm not going to make the food better. I'm not going to make the beds more comfortable. I'm not going to make the clothes stylish. Let's get out of here.
Absolutely.
I'm here to talk about going home, not getting you better soap or better lotion or more rec time. Let them have this place. You got a family waiting for you. Wow. Let your mother cook for you. Let your mother get you a new pillow. Let's not ask the state for a new pillow. Let's ask mom for a new pillow.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because so many people want a better prison. We call it being institutionalized. We want better services. We want better this. We want better pancakes. We want better milk. We want better. No, let's go home. Mom has the best of the best.
Absolutely.
It'll never be better here.
No, you can't get gumbo in prison, right?
We make some, hold on. There's some dudes like, hold up, lady. You pushing it. I done been down to Louisiana DOC. They cook. I had crawfish for the first time at Louisiana prison.
Really?
Shout out to the guys at DCI. Oh yeah, they made me, it was Raymond, I forget, it was in Cottonport. It was Raymond.
Yeah.
It's Cottonport prison. I went down there and they gave me crawfish. It was crazy good. They got some cooks in jail now.
Yeah,
It ain't mom's cooking, but go home. Any program I run, anywhere I run it, I tell all the men, if I'm not talking about going home, I'm not talking about nothing. So let the thing be the thing.
Yeah.
The main thing needs to be, let's go home. Not can they paint the walls a better color? Can they clean the bars better? Can I get a toilet brush? Stop using my hand? Let's just get out of here. Let these people have this place. Let's just go home to the place we're supposed to be. And I know when your son comes home, there's gonna be a phenomenal pillow, some really good food.
Some roast and gravy and rice and green peas and cornbread. He still says, Mom, you fix those turkey wings and that gravy and rice and that roast.
Yep.
So yeah, he knows on every Sunday. So when he comes home, we're gonna have a big old party.
Gotcha.
Big party with
Big
everything
party.
he wants. And that pillow and a warm blanket.
A warm blanket.
Yes.
So before we go, is there anything that you want to say to Blake and all the people watching?
As Mr. Norman says, if he's not talking about coming home, he's not talking about anything. So when you're in the midst of all of your friends, talk about coming home. That should be the only conversation. Whether you have 50 years or 150 years, talk about coming home.
Appreciate you coming through.
I appreciate you.
Oh, listen.
Thank you.
Gotta
Thank you
honor
for your
moms.
work. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for having me. But more importantly, thank you for dreaming the painting and painting that dream.
That's what we're doing.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it is your host, Andre Norman, Hope Media, the Mom Edition, a.k.a. the West Bank being the best bank, is in the building. We'll see you the next time.